Let's begin with an uncomfortable truth. Most people don't fail because they're weak. They fail because they believe the world rewards goodness. It doesn't. The world rewards power, strategy, and adaptability. The man who believes virtue alone brings victory is the first to be devoured by wolves. Machiavelli knew this 500 years ago when he wrote The Prince, and his words still echo through every boardroom, battlefield, and broken dream today. You've been told to trust the process, be patient, stay authentic. But tell me how many emperors waited their turn? How many conquerors won by being authentic instead of strategic? None. While you hesitate, strategists are already moving pieces across the board. Pieces that include you. This video isn't about self-help. It's about self-reconstruction, not as a dreamer, but as a tactician. We're going to rebuild you like a ruthless strategist, Machiavelli's way. I wasn't born ruthless. In fact, I was the opposite. Compliant, naive, desperate to be liked. I followed every rule, said yes too often, trusted too quickly. And the result? Betrayal, backstabbing, opportunities stolen by those with sharper fangs. I remember one moment vividly. I'd spent months helping a colleague on a project, late nights, unpaid hours, blind loyalty. The presentation came. My work, my ideas were showcased, but it was his name on the title slide. He smiled at me across the table as the executives applauded. That day, I realized the world doesn't remember the honest man. It remembers the man who controls the narrative. That betrayal was my rebirth. It forced me to study those who never suffered. That fate, the Caesars, the Churchills, the Napoleons. Men who played life like chess, not roulette. Machiavelli wrote during chaos Florence in the 1500s, where loyalty was currency and power shifted overnight. He saw weak rulers overthrown by charmers, idealists crushed by pragmatists, and those who couldn't adapt, erased. From that chaos emerged his timeless truth. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. But that quote isn't about cruelty, it's about control. To rebuild yourself like a strategist means learning to command perception, emotion, and opportunity. It's about mastering the art of timing, knowing when to appear humble, when to strike, and when to vanish. Napoleon understood this. When others prayed for peace, he studied war like scripture. His enemies had titles, he had momentum. He wasn't born noble. He built himself into one through relentless adaptation. Every failure was data, every setback a map of his enemy's weakness. So, ask yourself, when was the last time you studied your failures with that same cold precision? Or do you, like most, soothe yourself with comforting lies it wasn't meant to be? Next time will be better. The universe has a plan? The universe doesn't have a plan. You do. Or you don't, and someone else does it for you. Here's the forbidden truth. You don't need more motivation, you need a strategy for power. Your emotions are weapons or weaknesses depending on how you wield them. Your reputation, your network, your silence, all tools on the board. Machiavelli didn't write for peasants, he wrote for princes, but in this age, every person has the chance to become one. The battlefield is no longer the throne room, it's your career, your relationships, your identity. Every day, you either rule or are ruled. So as we go deeper into this series, I'll show you how to rebuild yourself through Machiavellian self-mastery, the art of being both wolf and shepherd. You'll learn how to turn betrayal into leverage, fear into focus, and loss into legacy. But before that, ask yourself this. Are you ready to be feared? Not for cruelty, but for capability. Are you ready to stop chasing validation and start commanding respect? Because from this moment on, the rules change. Most people hide their failures. I studied mine like crime scenes. I used to think the world was fair, that hard work, humility, and patience would eventually open doors. But life doesn't reward virtue. It rewards strategy. I learned that the hard way. Years ago, I worked at a firm where I gave everything: late nights, endless loyalty, and blind trust. My manager called me the future of the company. I believed him. Until one Monday morning, my desk was cleared, my login revoked, and my ideas presented under someone else's name. That betrayal shattered me. But it also revealed the truth. I wasn't a victim of injustice. I was a casualty of my own naivety. I'd been playing checkers in a world of chess. For weeks, I vanished. Friends thought I'd broken down, but I was studying. Not books, people, patterns, power. That's when I found Machiavelli. His words didn't comfort, they cut. Men are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, covetous, harsh, yes, but they explained everything I'd lived through. I realized my downfall wasn't bad luck. It was bad strategy. I'd confused goodness with strength. And in a predatory world, that's suicide. So, I changed. I learned the power of silence, not weakness, but control. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped oversharing. I let others reveal themselves first. I began speaking less and observing more. And something strange happened. The same people who ignored me began respecting me. Why? Because unpredictability commands attention. Predictability breeds contempt. That's when I understood Machiavelli's true brilliance. It's not about cruelty, it's about control. The appearance of virtue matters more than the practice of it. Look at Julius Caesar. When he crossed the Rubicon, he wasn't the most powerful, he was the most strategic. He smiled when he wanted to strike, forgave when it made him feared. Every act of mercy was a calculated move on the board. Or Churchill, ridiculed for years, sidelined, dismissed. But when the world descended into chaos, he rose. Not because fate favored him, but because he'd prepared while others prayed. They weren't lucky. They were ready. That became my creed. Never rely on luck when you can rely on leverage. I rebuilt myself piece by piece. Stripped out the weakness, the need for validation, the soft parts that believed fairness was real. I stopped chasing approval and started creating advantage. And that's when life began to shift. See, transformation isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you could have been before the world made you tame. So ask yourself, how many times have you played small, hoping virtue would save you? How many betrayals have you forgiven just to avoid discomfort? How much longer will you keep confusing kindness with power? Rebuilding yourself requires demolition first. You have to burn down the old architecture, the parts built on fear, approval, and waiting for permission. Once you do, something sharp emerges. Focus, discipline, calm ruthlessness. You stop reacting and start designing. That's when you stop being a pawn and start moving like a prince. Power doesn't corrupt, it reveals. That's what Machiavelli understood before anyone else, that morality, loyalty, even love are masks people wear until power exposes what's underneath. You can only rebuild yourself when you stop believing in appearances and start studying the architecture of control. Machiavelli lived in Chaos, Florence, 1500s, a city of shifting alliances, assassinations, exiles. One day you're a trusted advisor, the next you're chained in a dungeon. He watched idealists fall and strategists rise. From that battlefield of politics and betrayal, he forged a philosophy that still slices through the centuries. The world belongs to those who understand how it really works. His masterpiece, The Prince, wasn't a guide for tyrants, it was a manual for survival. It stripped away illusions and replaced them with mechanics, cause and effect, action and consequence. He didn't moralize, he analyzed. He wrote that a ruler must learn how not to be good, not to be evil, but to be effective, to know when compassion strengthens you and when it weakens you, to act decisively, even when your heart trembles, because indecision is the most expensive weakness of all. Think of Alexander the Great. He inherited chaos, not comfort. He faced mutiny, betrayal, endless war, yet he never hesitated. He used speed as a weapon. While others debated, he conquered. When his army grew restless, he burned his own ships, so retreat became impossible. That's Machiavellian genius, cutting off escape so victory becomes the only option. Or Napoleon, small in stature, massive in strategy. He understood perception was power. His soldiers didn't follow him because he was royal. They followed because he made them feel chosen. He weaponized psychology. A soldier will fight long and hard, he said, for a bit of colored ribbon. He knew people crave recognition more than truth. That's the core of Machiavellian thinking. Understand what drives others, and you can move them like pieces on a board. Most people live reactively, driven by emotion, chained by ideals. They think strategy is manipulation. But manipulation is just poorly disguised strategy. The real difference is intention. A manipulator uses people for chaos. A strategist uses people for creation, for order, for design, for power that builds rather than destroys. When you rebuild yourself the Machiavellian way, you start by replacing morality with clarity. You stop asking, "Is this right?" and start asking, "Will this work?" You stop craving fairness and start creating advantage. You stop reacting to power and start studying it. The truth is, Machiavelli didn't invent ruthlessness, he revealed it. Every kingdom, every company, every relationship runs on the same invisible law. Those who control perception control reality. That's why you can't rebuild yourself as the person you've been. You must become the architect, cold-eyed, calculating, yet disciplined enough to use power with precision. The modern world doesn't kill the weak with swords anymore. It kills them with irrelevance. So, ask yourself, are you still clinging to ideals that keep you powerless? Do you seek fairness in a world built on leverage? When you lose, do you justify it or dissect it? Because every time you say life isn't fair, you're admitting you don't understand the game. And Machiavelli's greatest gift is the map of that game, the unfiltered mechanics of human behavior, power, and perception. Rebuilding yourself like a strategist begins here. Detach emotion. Study motive. Master timing. The world doesn't need more good people. It needs competent ones. Controlled, deliberate, unshakable. And, in the next stage, we'll begin building that competence. Translating this philosophy into real, evidence-based tactics you can use to reconstruct your mind, your habits, and your presence into something formidable, something untouchable, something feared because it's earned. Power is not given, it's engineered. Every move you make either builds leverage or bleeds it. And most people bleed every day through distraction, emotion, and attachment. You don't lose because you're incapable. You lose because you're unstrategic. Let's bring this into the real world. Modern research in behavioral psychology reveals what Machiavelli understood 5 centuries ago. Humans are predictably irrational. Daniel Kahneman's studies on cognitive bias show we act from emotion first, logic second. People don't want truth, they want comfort. They don't follow intelligence, they follow confidence. That's why the loudest often outrun the smartest. Machiavelli called this virtue, not virtue, but power shaped through force, will, and adaptability. The ability to bend chaos into opportunity. In neuroscience terms, it's prefrontal dominance, controlling the emotional storm of the amygdala to make clear, cold decisions while others panic. That's your first step in rebuilding yourself. Emotional sovereignty. Without it, every victory will be temporary. With it, you can walk through betrayal, humiliation, even failure, and remain composed enough to play the next move. I learned this through loss. After that corporate betrayal, I started practicing emotional detachment like a soldier drills marksmanship. I stopped reacting instantly to messages. I paused before replying. I let silence stretch, even when it burned. And what happened? Control shifted. People began waiting on my response. My presence became unpredictable. My words carried more weight because they were no longer impulsive. That's the essence of power-controlled unpredictability. When others can't predict you, they can't control you. It's the same strategy Sun Tzu preached in The Art of War. Be formless, shapeless, like water. When you move, fall like thunder. He wasn't speaking about combat. He was describing human interaction. The more predictable your behavior, the easier it is to be used. The more you master your response, the more you become the strategist, calm amid chaos, still while others burn. Science backs this ruthlessness. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio found that decision-making is a fusion of logic and emotion, and when you learn to regulate your emotions, your logic sharpens. Machiavelli predicted this centuries before neuroscience existed. He knew that fear clouds perception, that anger blinds timing, that compassion, if uncontrolled, weakens judgment. He wasn't against emotion. He simply believed it should serve strategy, not sabotage it. That's the pivot point for anyone rebuilding themselves. Stop reacting. Start responding. Stop chasing validation. Start controlling perception. Stop seeking comfort. Start seeking control. Every conversation, every gesture, every pause becomes a deliberate choice. That's how you rebuild identity, through discipline, not declarations. Caesar once said, "Men willingly believe what they wish to be true." He used that weakness like a weapon. Before crossing the Rubicon, he staged public generosity banquets, reforms, theatrics, to appear beloved. In reality, he was manufacturing emotional leverage. By the time he made his move, the people were already his shield. That's how power works. You win before the battle begins. So, how do you apply this now? Start small. 3 daily drills. Delay your reaction. Every time you feel triggered, wait. Power lives in the pause. Control the frame. Never answer a question inside someone else's narrative. Redirect it to your advantage. Observe patterns. People repeat behaviors. Betrayal, flattery, manipulation. Study them. Anticipate them. These 3 disciplines alone will make you rare. And rarity is value. As we speak, millions are wasting energy, fighting battles of emotion, arguing, defending, explaining. You'll be collecting data, refining tactics, sharpening composure. Because that's what Machiavelli taught. Emotion is for poetry. Power is for those who can stay calm under siege. So ask yourself, are you mastering your emotions, or are your emotions mastering you? Every empire falls from within first. Every downfall begins with reaction. Perception is the currency of power, and the second you stop controlling it, someone else starts investing in it for you. That's what Machiavelli meant when he said a prince must appear merciful, faithful, humane, religious, upright, and yet be ready to act the opposite when necessity requires. He wasn't teaching hypocrisy. He was teaching optics. Because perception shapes reality long before truth ever catches up. Modern science calls this impression management. Psychologists like Irving Goffman and Robert Cialdini proved that humans judge others not by what's real, but by what's signaled. Authority, confidence, and control are performances before they are realities. You don't need to be powerful to look powerful. But once you look powerful, power often follows. That's your next step. Strategic self-reinvention. When I began to rebuild myself, I did something that scared me. I went silent for 30 days. No social media, no explanations, no updates, just absence. At first, people asked if something was wrong. Then they started wondering why. And that's the key. The unknown creates fascination. Invisibility amplifies presence. When I returned, I was different, calmer, slower, deliberate. I had practiced stillness. I spoke less, but every word landed like a strike. People listened differently, not because I changed my message, but because I changed the perception of who was speaking. Every powerful figure in history mastered this art. Napoleon staged his own myth. Before battles, he'd ride alone in front of his men. exposing himself to enemy fire not for bravery, but for image. He understood that courage must be seen to be believed. Churchill rehearsed his spontaneous speeches in secret until they sounded raw and unrehearsed. His chaos was calculated, his charisma engineered. They built personas, not facades, but armor. Machiavelli warned, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." That's not cynicism, that's freedom. It means you control the surface while protecting the depth. Let's ground this in reality. Research from Princeton psychologists Janine Willis and Alexander Todorov shows that humans form first impressions in under 1/10 of a second, and those impressions often persist for years. You don't get to choose whether you project an image. You only choose which image. So the question becomes, what does your current image say? Does it command or comply? Does it project scarcity or strength? Do you walk into rooms with quiet confidence or anxious energy that leaks through every gesture? Every glance, every tone, every pause either raises or lowers your social gravity. You're either bending perception or being bent by it. Here's the tactical framework. Control your tempo. Speak slightly slower than those around you. It signals composure. Commanders never rush. Use scarcity. Be less available, more deliberate. Absence builds value faster than effort. Master micro-expressions. A steady gaze, relaxed posture, controlled breath. These are the modern weapons of dominance. These aren't tricks. They're signals of inner stability, the kind most people never develop because they chase approval instead of authority. In today's digital world, Machiavellian strategy translates into brand, presence, and identity. Every post, every word, every silence either strengthens or weakens your empire. The battlefield isn't geography anymore, it's attention. And if you don't design your perception, someone else will. They'll define you, label you, reduce you, and by the time you notice, it'll be too late. So ask yourself, are you sculpting your myth, or are you living inside someone else's story? Because to rebuild yourself like a ruthless strategist, perception isn't decoration, it's armor. The moment you start to rise, resistance will come. Not from your enemies, from the people who claim to love you. They'll say you've changed, that you're cold, distant, different, and they'll be right. Because evolution always looks like arrogance to those who stayed the same. When you rebuild yourself like a strategist, the first war isn't external, it's internal. You'll fight guilt, doubt, nostalgia. You'll miss the comfort of mediocrity because it was familiar. But the lion doesn't mourn the sheep it used to be. When I began my transformation, I underestimated this battle. I thought discipline would be the hardest part. It wasn't. It was loneliness. Friends faded. Conversations dried up. People who once celebrated me became suspicious. They missed the version of me that needed validation. I realized they weren't attached to me, they were attached to my weakness. So I stopped defending my change. I stopped explaining my silence. I let the misunderstandings happen. Because Machiavelli warned, a wise man must never grieve if he loses the favor of the fickle. You must choose between approval and authority. You can't have both. History proves it. When Caesar defied the Senate and marched on Rome, every ally begged him to turn back. They said, "This will destroy you." He smiled and said, "The die is cast." That's not recklessness, that's conviction. He understood that hesitation is more dangerous than rebellion, or Napoleon, exiled once, returned to France alone, unarmed. The army sent to arrest him surrounded him with rifles. He opened his coat and shouted, "If any of you would shoot your emperor, do it now." Not one bullet fired. Why? Because courage, when absolute, is contagious. Resistance isn't a sign you're wrong, it's a sign you're disrupting the order that kept you small. But the most dangerous resistance isn't external. It's the whisper inside your head that says, "Maybe I should go back." That voice is your old identity begging for resurrection. It fears the unknown. It craves the predictable pain it understands. And if you listen long enough, it wins quietly, politely, permanently. To silence it, you must anchor yourself in purpose, stronger than comfort. You must remind yourself daily why the old you had to die. Machiavelli called this necessity, the force that drives men to do what must be done, not what feels right. Because every transformation carries a price: solitude, misunderstanding, exile. But if you can endure it, the reward is unshakable clarity. Here's how you fight the resistance. Expect betrayal. When it comes, you won't be surprised. You'll be prepared. Use pain as proof. Discomfort means you're rewiring identity. No pain, no progress. Cultivate indifference. Approval is volatile. Detach from praise and blame alike. And remember, people don't hate your strength. They hate what it reflects their surrender. So, when the world tests you, when the old life claws to pull you back, smile. You're confirming what Machiavelli, Caesar, and every strategist before you knew. Resistance is validation. Ask yourself right now, are you ready to outgrow your own tribe? Can you withstand being misunderstood, misjudged, even hated if it means owning your destiny? Most won't. Most would rather stay liked than become powerful. But you're not most. This stage of rebuilding is where pretenders fall away and real transformation begins. Because once you overcome resistance, you stop reacting to life and start designing it. Every empire faces its final test, not from enemies, from within. When the dust settles, when your systems are solid and your name begins to carry weight, the old hunger fades. Comfort sneaks in wearing the clothes of success. You start to think you've made it. That's the most dangerous illusion of all, Machiavelli warned. The innovator makes enemies of all who prospered under the old order. He was speaking about nations, but it applies to you. Once you rebuild yourself, you threaten the old version of you that everyone benefited from. They'll try to pull you back subtly, kindly, manipulatively. Your final challenge is to rule yourself with the same precision you ruled your chaos. When I reached this stage, everything looked perfect. The career, the confidence, the control. But deep down, a voice whispered, "Relax, you've earned it." That's the voice that kills kings. The second you stop sharpening your blade, life dulls it for you. So I designed a ritual. Every month, I audit my life like a general inspects troops. What's weak? What's redundant? What's dangerous? Then I cut. No hesitation. No sentiment. That's how you stay dangerous. By refusing comfort disguised as peace. Look at history's giants. Alexander the Great didn't stop at victory. He asked, "What's next?" until exhaustion consumed him. Caesar never rested. Even after ruling Rome, he reformed its calendar, restructured its debts, redrew its systems. He didn't chase ease, he chased immortality. Churchill led Britain through war, and when victory came, they discarded him. Did he break? No. He wrote, reflected, prepared for the next storm. Their common thread: they built without attachment. They ruled without rest. That's the essence of Machiavellian rebirth, relentless renewal. Now, it's your turn. You've learned emotional control, the power to stay calm when others crumble. You've mastered perception, the art of influence without exposure. You've built systems, time, focus, alliances, intelligence. But none of that matters unless you turn it into legacy. A strategist doesn't live to survive, he lives to shape history, even if only his own. So here's your final challenge. Audit your kingdom. Write down what rules you: habits, people, distractions. Then decide who stays and who goes. Design your myth. Ask, when people speak your name, what emotion do you want to command? Fear, respect, intrigue? Then act accordingly. Build your fortress. Physically, mentally, financially. So no betrayal, no failure, no collapse can touch your core again. As you do this, remember being Machiavellian isn't about domination. It's about design. It's about understanding that life is war disguised as routine, and most people never learn to fight. While others chase comfort, you will build control. While others seek fairness, you will master leverage. While others wait for opportunity, you will create inevitability. Because the world does not remember the dreamers. It remembers the strategists who dared to rebuild themselves when everyone else was busy pretending to be good. So now, as you close this chapter, ask yourself, will you go back to being ruled by emotion, routine, and fear? Or will you step forward as your own prince, deliberate, composed, untouchable? Time is running out. The next decade of your life is being designed now. Build it like Machiavelli would, with eyes wide open, heart armored, and strategy sharper than ever. Because in the end, there's only one question that matters. Will you rule your world or be ruled by it?